Well, good evening, everyone. Welcome to, what do we call it? Meeting the Moment, Leadership in a Turbulent World, and it's gotten even more turbulent since we came up with that title. So I can't think of any more important moment to be having this conversation or a better person to be having it with this evening. So thank you all for being here. I'm Fritz. I'm the Dean of the Korbel School. Delighted to welcome you all. Before we start, let me just say quickly that when we hold these events, we hold them in the spirit of having civil discourse. And so we ask that you not interrupt our speaker. I know emotions run high right now, but anyone who is disrupting and preventing the speaker from continuing to talk will be asked to leave. So I probably don't need to say that, but we do at every event. Well, I mean, in some ways we're at a pivotal moment. I think, internationally there's been so much in the news, Venezuela, Greenland. We're practically at war with Canada right now. We're asking Alberta to secede, on and on. We've withdrawn from UN organization, many international organizations, and a host of other things. It's really a lot. But obviously at home, things are also very, very turbulent now. And we've witnessed in the last weeks and now in the last days extraordinary events in Minneapolis. The killing by ICE, what is hard not to call a murder, to be honest, if you look at the video. Yeah, and yeah, just push up, and then there's a bit of a time lag on it.
How about now?
There you go. There you go.
Yeah, we can call it a murder.
Yeah, and the statements made by the administration about it. We really, I think it's not hyperbole to say we're at a pivotal moment. I think in this country, and a bit of a test of whether will be able to live up to the values that have, we've never fully lived up to it, but at least we're a North Star, and whether out of what is happening now we can come together as one, or whether we, to paraphrase Lincoln, are a house divided that cannot stand. And so much is at stake. Congressman Jason Crow, you all know his biography, probably, and really, as I said at the beginning, there's really no one better to speak at this moment. He's certainly in the eye of the storm here. As you know, former Army Ranger and paratrooper, served 3 tours of duty in Afghanistan and Iraq, a lawyer, and importantly, a DU alum. Bravo. And for the past 7 years has been congressman representing Colorado's 6th district. Whether you agree or disagree with all of Jason's policy positions, you have to acknowledge that he's not afraid to lead. From his bravery and cool head on January 6th, where you helped to shepherd your colleagues off the House floor at a moment of some danger, to his willingness to speak frankly on the issues. You just heard a bit of that now, and you've been hearing him in the news, and not to back down in the face of some real pressure and some threats. So I can't think of anyone better to talk about leadership in a turbulent time. Jason, thanks so much for joining us this evening. So it's on everyone's mind. So we should begin with what's happened in Minneapolis. Yesterday, or over the weekend, I think you posted on Facebook a statement. You were wearing your Broncos hat, so I assume it was just before the ill-fated game. But you said you'd looked at the video of what had happened and concluded that Alex Preddy was murdered. And you used that word, gunned down by these ICE agents. And you urged everyone to take a look at that video. But, quote, not to listen to this administration which is lying and distorting the truth. So those are strong words. So just why did you come to that conclusion? And as a leader, why speak out in such strong terms?
Well, thank you, Dean Meyer, and to the University of Denver. I have a long history with this institution, and your willingness to embrace tough conversations and important moments is one of the reasons why I wanted to come here at this pivotal time, as you said. I don't think any of this is strong words, by the way. It's just the truth, right? I mean, it shouldn't be strong. It shouldn't be like showing of courage. It's none of that. Like literally everybody should just be saying what is true, right? And that should not be unusual. That should not stick out in any way. And the fact that it does, I think, is telling how big of a leadership crisis we're facing right now at kind of all levels of government. That it's rare when people say things that are just patently true. I think one of the reasons is that when you do say things that are true, you become a target, and I have become a target of this administration. The president has threatened multiple times to have me personally arrested and tried for treason and executed, and that's resulted in hundreds of death threats and security and all sorts of things. But, so be it. If my oath to this country and my job compels me to have to say the truth and continue to speak the truth and have the ire of this president and his administration, then that's just what leadership in the moment requires. And that's all there is to say about it. And if he thinks that they're going to get me to back down, that I'm going to be threatened and intimidated and back away from my oath, they're making a big mistake. Because I don't do threats and intimidation well. Mark Kelly doesn't do threats and intimidation well. It's not who we are. I just was talking to Mark this morning, and we're like, yeah. What's the next step? We obviously need to continue to stand up and speak the truth, and we're going to. So that's kind of broadly how I view this moment. That there is no other way to lead, and there's no other way to do the job than to put yourself right in the mix of what's happening. Because the point is not really actually about me or Mark Kelly or Alyssa Slotkin. The point is they're trying to make an example out of us. They're trying to make an example out of us so that everybody else would be like, wow, members of Congress and senators can't speak up because then they'll be crushed. So why would we possibly speak up? And we are simply unwilling to allow that to happen. So we're going to continue to do that. I watched the video, multiple videos, multiple ways. I believe that Mr. Preddy was gunned down in cold blood. I think he was murdered by those ICE agents. And I've encouraged Americans to all watch the video for themselves and not to be lied to by this administration, which has tried to distort this in multiple ways. And not only is there the issue of Mr. Preddy and that murder and the need for investigation and accountability that we need to press for, but there's the larger problem of this rogue runaway agency that's been created by this administration, that started and has been exacerbated by this administration. In April of last year, a massive spending bill basically gave this agency a blank check, right? It has 3 times its normal budget. It has a larger budget than the United States Marine Corps. I of course, opposed and tried to stop that spending bill from going through. We weren't able to do so. We didn't have the votes. But in that time, a couple of things have happened. Number one, the administration has sent a message that they can operate however they want, and there will not be accountability. Vice President Vance has called this absolute immunity just a couple of weeks ago. That's what he said. So that sends a message. Number two, the funding that's been flowed in has allowed them to recruit all these new agents. And the videos that Secretary Noem has put out are just disgusting videos that encourage brutality, that encourage violence. So you have these people who are stepping up to serve that are looking at these videos saying, yeah, that's what I want to do for my life. That's what I want to do for a living, is do that. So they're recruiting folks into this organization with that culture and with that mentality. And of course, you add the impunity, the lawlessness, and it's a toxic mix, as we have seen, and it's a mix that will continue until we can marshal the forces in the coalition to stop it, which is what we're actively trying to do. And the last piece is creating a broader coalition outside of all of our echo chambers, right? Because what we have to do is not just talk to ourselves about this and how bad it is, but we have to expand our coalition and bring people in. And that includes people who are, gun rights activists that maybe I disagree with a lot, who are appalled by what the president has said. That includes, veterans and law enforcement and other. Because I talk to a lot of law enforcement agencies a lot. I talk to, the sheriffs in my district and the police chiefs and everybody else. And honest, respectful law enforcement agents and officers look at this and they're like, this is disparaging the profession, right? This is not what a career law enforcement officer would expect proper behavior to be in the way that you actually establish trust with a community. Because you talk to career law enforcement officers and they say that the best way to police a community and keep it safe is you have to obviously enforce the law and abide by the law, but you have to build trust with a community. And all of this stuff about wearing masks and unmarked vehicles and snatching people off of street corners and deporting U.S. citizens and denying people hearings and habeas corpus, it's not only antithetical to everything we are as a country, but it also undermines your ability to actually do the job of law enforcement and keep communities safe. So there is a way in which I think we can bring law enforcement into the fold to push back on this and fix this long term.
So let me pick up. You said a lot there. So let me pick up.
It was a lot.
Yeah, it is a lot. I mean, on the idea of building a coalition. I mean, I worked in the Congress. I know something of what it's like to be in the minority in the House. You have, in a lot of ways, very limited power. So, a question in terms of, how you think about your time, your role, your ability to lead in this moment, and the extent to which you rely on your voice and the efforts to change perceptions, to bring people together. Talk a bit about how you think about the task at hand, given that Congress has been slow to act on many fronts. You're actually working on a number of fronts trying to get Congress to where's the point of leverage in this moment to push back at ICE, to push back at the funding you mentioned in passing, and what is your role in helping to make that happen?
Yeah, the points of leverage in the near term, they are appropriations, right? Funding. We have to cut funding off to lawless agencies and those who are abusing Americans. And I have repeatedly voted to do that, and I will continue to vote to do that. In fact, 2 weeks ago, I did a TV interview. It was like CNN or something, and I was asked straight up. They're like, "Would you like not pass the funding bill and shut the government down over this DHS funding bill?" I'm like, yes, I would, because that's actually my job, right? Like, my job is not just to keep the trains running. And I've used this analogy, right? That if some people are like, well, we should just keep the train on the track and keep the train running. I'm like, well, if you see the bridge is out, why keep the train running to a bridge that's out and it's all going to crash and blow up at the end of it, right? That's not my job. My job is to be a steward of the taxpayer dollar and to make sure the laws are being enforced and Americans are being treated with respect and the constitutional rights are being enforced. And the power of the purse is the primary way in which Congress has that leverage. So you have to be able to use that leverage, number one. Number two, legislating, because there's non-appropriating legislating, and I've effectively used that by passing a bunch of laws over the last 5 years, 6 years, to put guardrails into place around immigration detention and other things. I've made this a priority. I've been leading on immigration detention oversight since day one, actually, of my time in Congress. I helped pass the Public Oversight of Detention Centers Act when in 2019 I was denied access not once, not twice, but 3 times to the Geo Detention Center in Aurora in 2019. That really pissed me off, so I made it a law that compelled them to allow us access. the administration is ignoring that law, so I'm now suing the administration, right? So that's the other piece. So it's the money, it's legislating. When they violate the law, then it's litigating, and then it's oversight and accountability, which now the greater public has a massive role in, right? And I'm going to be really clear about this. So much of what's happening, we would not know about if it weren't for these courageous Americans who are stepping up around the country and filming and bearing witness to what is going on at great personal peril, as we've seen, right? Democracy dies in the darkness, as the Washington Post once said, and they used to live up to that adage, and they don't really as much anymore, unfortunately, although there are some amazing folks there still. But it does. And public oversight and Americans conducting that role of bringing to light what's happening makes it easier for me to do my job, makes it all easier for us to know what's happening in our democracy and our name, and to stop abuses when they occur.
Talk about, you're talking about the media and the importance of information, and as you point out, these very brave people, braver than we knew probably, filming and providing video evidence of what's actually happening. But at the same time, you have misinformation is too nice a word, but the way in which the leaders in the administration, immediately characterize Mr. Preddy as an assassin, et cetera, et cetera. And you have pervasive misinformation in the social media, including some AI-generated images, et cetera, et cetera. Talk about the challenge of that you face and others who are trying to get the truth out about what's happening in this media environment. What are how do you push back at the misinformation? How do you penetrate into those parts of at least the polity that are getting their information not from even the Washington Post, diluted as it may be, but from TikTok or their Facebook feed?
Great question, because information, I think, is if it's not our greatest challenge, it's certainly near the top of our democracy right now, because you alluded to these generative AIs, these deep fakes that we're starting to see in our discourse. There's no law in the United States that prevents that from happening, right? There's actually only 2 countries in the world that have regulatory systems and laws to prevent generative AI and deep fakes. We're not one of them. So we're not equipped to deal with this, number one. Number two, we have an administration that promotes it, right? Because they want chaos. They want us to get so confused about what the truth is and what's right and what's wrong that we disengage, right? And that we give up on trying to figure out what the truth is. So digital literacy is really important right now. We used to, and I'm going to date myself a little bit here, but we used to have like library services classes, and you'd go in and you learn how to use the card index and all this stuff, and how to look at sources, primary sources and secondary sources, and figure out how to be a discriminating recipient of information. And our education system doesn't have, some actually are starting to do this now, but we're way behind where we need to be in having the digital equivalent of that. That's number 3. And then the 4th is just speed. And that's my role, right? Is what the administration and folks around the president have figured out is you can just quickly say something that's wrong or a lie, and then it just spreads like wildfire. And by the time that we fix it, and by the time that we correct it, it doesn't matter. The damage is already done. Right, so they just throw these things out there as quick as possible, and they're using the speed of the system and information dissemination to their advantage. So what it means for us is we have to just move lightning fast, right? If something happens, you need to have a team that quickly is on it and sees something, and then just saturates with the truth and the counter narrative. We cannot sit around and let perfect be the enemy of the good and figure out, well, how do we respond to this? And what's the right way to, you just have to move. You have to move quick to respond to it. So speed is essential right now.
Yeah. somewhat more general question about Congress, but it's part of what you're talking about in this particular case. You've been urged Congress to be more active in asserting itself in more powers. Obviously in the funding of ICE, in access to detention, and a host of other things. But at the most general, I guess this is really a question about your assessment of the political landscape right now. Being in the minority, there's been a pretty solid block. You start to see some cracks in it in the last couple of days, and one begins to wonder, maybe this is the moment where people who recognize or who are uneasy about what's going on in the Republican Party maybe finally break with the president. Let me just ask you, you've prided yourself and have been very, very much someone who's tried to work across the aisle and have done so on many occasions. And you have conversations with a lot of people on the other side of the aisle. I'm just curious, what your assessment is right now of the level of courage and willingness to take on the president by those who really don't agree with what's happening.
Well, it's not good. I'll say that, and I don't say that lightly, and I don't mean to be trite, because you're right in that I have been up until this past year one of the most bipartisan members of Congress. 75% of the bills I've introduced in my career have been with Republican co-leads. I've always been the top 10 in the House of Representatives, not 10%, top 10 in bipartisanship, because I mean it, because it's how our democracy works when it works best. It's how it works when it's healthy, and nobody has a monopoly on being right all the time. I don't, my party doesn't, and the beauty of our system is we can have that clash of ideas and figure out the best result when it works. And I've also found great common cause with my fellow veterans. I actually was the co-founder when I came into Congress in 2018 of the Bipartisan Veterans Caucus, because we came in, all of us vets, and we're like, hey, this institution is not working, largely because we think the culture is broken. So we created this Veterans Caucus to try to help change the culture, and we actually have become one of the most effective, legislatively effective caucuses, have passed over 100 bills into law and show that it works. So all of that said, we now, in the last year, it's clear that we are in a constitutional crisis. We're in a crisis of our democracy. We're in a leadership crisis. All of those are converging. And there has been a stunning lack of courage by a lot of people who I have considered friends in their unwillingness to stand up and do the right thing. And I'm not asking them to storm the beaches of Normandy or walk across the Edmund Pettus Bridge or do anything else that incredible Americans have done at great personal peril. I'm asking them to take tough votes and maybe lose their job. So be it, right? That is what the job sometimes requires. And very few have been willing to do that. And we see the consequences of that. So I'm kind of the view that people have had a lot of chances. I've kind of find myself at these. I have a knack for being at like the craziest moments and being called in. Whether it's January 6th or being one of the prosecutors of the impeachment trial, or being involved in the Afghanistan oversight response and all these moments. So a lot of people have had plenty of time to show courage, and I'm done hoping that they will do that. Hope is not a plan anymore. So I know this is not a political event, and I'm not going to go there, but I think the bottom line is some people just need to go home, and we need we need people, we need a new generation of leaders to step up and to take our country in a different direction.
I want to talk about courage a bit. You alluded to really the reaction to the video that you, Mark Kelly, Lissa Slock, and 3 others put together, speaking directly to the military. saying that you can, indeed must, disobey or not obey unlawful orders. To say that this engendered a sharp response to the administration is understatement. It's become quite a cause, and as you alluded to, included words like traitor and treason and even execution, remarkably uttered by leaders. Well, let me just start with this, and I want to come to sort of how you've handled it. But maybe you could say it's just a few words about why you made that video. What sort of triggered that? Because it was in the moment of lead up to Venezuela, when we've been blowing boats out of the water, but also in the statement you alluded to the potential use of force here at home as well. So I know you've been pressed by the media to sort of articulate, what unlawful orders are you talking about? But I won't ask it that way. But I am curious, sort of, what was your thinking, yours and your colleagues' thinking about why that message needed to be made?
Yeah, so first of all, I think there have been a number of violations of the law of war by this administration, and I remain deeply concerned by the conduct in the Caribbean, both the lack of congressional authorization, but also that second strike that occurred on September 2nd. I watched that video too, and I see no reason as a former combat leader why that second strike should have been taken, and I think it was a violation of law. That's my determination, and I continue to press the administration to release that video because I think Americans would come to the same conclusion if they were to see it. But the video, though, the "Don't Give Up the Ship" video, which has resulted in me now being under DOJ and FBI investigation as I sit here today, which of course is a meritless, baseless investigation, but that's not the point. They're just trying to threaten and intimidate and harass us using their political cronies at these agencies. It was not directed at any one thing, right? It wasn't a, this order, obey this order or that order, because that's not the point, right? So let me tell a story. When I was 23, I took over my first platoon of paratroopers in the 82nd Airborne Division. And I've been given orders to prepare this platoon for the invasion of Iraq in 2003. This is a platoon of, 18, 19, and 20-year-old paratroopers largely. And I had studied, the ethics of war and the law of war and the morality of war, preparing for that moment, going through my officer training. I read a lot, and I read a lot about the My Lai massacre and how things happen at war and the psychology behind that. And what I knew is to prepare these men to not just do the job and to be warriors in the moment, but to do so ethically and principally, and to come home as whole people, or at least as whole as I could bring them home. I needed to prepare them the right way. And there's a scene, you all seen the movie Platoon? So I grew up watching that movie, and there's a scene there that basically is based on the My Lai massacre. So I brought all my paratroopers into the common room of the barracks and rented a platoon, and I showed them that scene. And then I led a discussion with them about how that happened, right? What takes somebody and what flips in you, what amount of fear and anxiety and pressure turns you into the person that would do that to somebody, and how do you lose touch with yourself? And I know that at war, it's very easy to forget who you are. It's very easy to forget where you come from, and to lose sight of home, and how hard that can be on soldiers. That's called the moral injury of war. So I had that discussion, and I wanted to train them and get them ready for that, and I set that tone early on, because I knew those men would, when I took them to war, when you're in a combat situation, you're making split-second decisions. You sometimes have a second or two to decide, do you shoot or do you not shoot? What do you do? And you cannot, in that moment, have that discussion, right? There just isn't the time. You have to have the discussion before, which is what training and guidance and leadership is about. So that's the video, right? We have a president and a commander-in-chief who has repeatedly made statements about using the military in unlawful ways, right? Shooting protesters in the leg in Lafayette Square, deploying troops to polling stations, which is a violation of U.S. criminal law, by the way, going to war with U.S. cities. There are numerous other examples. Killing, he's talked about killing the family members of terrorists. We're going to kill their family and their children, which also is a violation of the law and the Geneva Conventions. So he's said these things, and he's used the military and law enforcement, and I think in unlawful ways. So what we wanted to do, the six of us, was jumpstart a national conversation, about what the oath and the law requires, what the UCMJ requires, to destigmatize that conversation, and to also send a message to our soldiers, of which I have a great love and respect for, our service members, that America and Americans will be behind you if you do the right thing and if you fulfill your duty in a lawful way, you follow the Constitution and you follow lawful orders. That was the point of the video, and I think we were very successful in that. If nothing else, if there's there was a 10-minute segment on The View where they talked about the UCMJ, I'm like, yes, we won. If The View is talking about the law of warfare and UCMJ, that is a success. But that was the point. And the response was more telling than anything. Yeah. If simply coming out and saying, follow the law, results in the response that it does, that kind of tells you everything you need to know. Because it also turns out, by the way, that Pete Hegseth literally said the same thing in 2016. Pam Bondi literally said the same thing in 2024 to the U.S. Supreme Court in oral arguments. And almost every combat commander preparing their troops for deployment also says the same thing, because this is not news. This is not unusual if you're in the military to have this type of training and discussion. But in the world of this administration and president, saying that you should follow the law instead of his mandates is a cardinal sin.
There's a lot of amnesia going around, I'm afraid. I want to say we're going to open up for questions from you in just a moment, so be thinking about that. We have mics that we'll pass around. Let me come to the aftermath of this, the kind of pressure that you're under. So Hegseth is, they're in the Department of Justice, you're under investigation as we speak, as you said. But you also, I know, regularly, I suppose, but particularly now, receive death threats and the like. And you were watching the interview with Amna Navas on PBS, and I was just so taken. You were asked whether you were afraid you take them seriously, and you said you take them very seriously, but you wouldn't. I won't be intimidated. Trump uses fear and intimidation to silence dissent, to silence opposition, and to silence free speech. And then you said it, and a few other things, but then you said fear is contagious, and so is courage. I like that, and I intend to lead. So first of all, that's a powerful statement. Say a few words about how you think about the contagion of courage.
Well, first of all, it's okay to sometimes be afraid. I've been afraid a lot in my life. In almost any combat situation, if you're not feeling fear, there's something probably wrong with you, right? Or you're lying. So there's that also adage that courage isn't the absence of fear; it's the ability to still operate and do your job when you're afraid. So there's that. And it's true that it's contagious. And the example that I use is when I was a paratrooper. I have a fear of heights, by the way. I do. I became I literally became a jump master in the military. I was a parachute instructor. I'm like, imagine that.
That's overdoing it.
That's overdoing it. Sometimes I overcorrect. It's true. Sometimes I overcorrect. But there's a tradition in the paratroopers that the leader of the unit, when you're in a plane and you're getting ready to jump out on the objective, the leader goes first. And the idea behind that is, you're supposed to set the example, and then your soldiers will follow. And then when you're in the field and out in operations and you get food, your soldiers eat first. And then if there's any food left, then you eat last. And that's kind of the essence of servant leadership. So I was trying to capture the sentiment of that and kind of what that looks like. But in terms of safety, I take my safety seriously. I'm not cavalier about it, right? Because that would be dumb. I've got a family, and I protect my family, and I protect my staff. My staff has served under great duress and has received threats and bomb threats and other things like that. And I'm grateful for these young Americans being willing to step up and serve and to work with me to do great work during a very difficult time. And they're kind of the unsung heroes of my team over and over again. But this is the moment, right? We didn't choose this moment, by the way, right? None of us woke up this morning and be like, wow, I really want to live in a time where there's political extremism and political violence and our democracy is under attack and we have to be the ones. But that is studying history. You never get to choose your moment, ever. Right? The moment is thrust upon you, and people that lead simply have to choose whether or not they're willing to step up and answer the call in their moment. So the moment has been thrust upon us. It's not our decision. None of us want to be in this moment, but that is not our choice. So our choice only is whether we're willing to make the sacrifice and get uncomfortable and do the things necessary to carry it forward. And people have done that in the past. The Freedom Riders have done it. The Greatest Generation have done it, did it. The suffragettes did it. They met their moment, and now it's ours. And then I think we're at the, I can count on this hand, I think, the number of pivotal moments our country has faced similar to the one we're in right now. And that is, I think, as serious as it gets. And now it's our time.
Yeah. Well, we certainly here at the Korbel School, we called our strategic plan Meeting the Moment. And one form of contagion is just to be inspired by your courage and willingness to meet the moment. So thank you for that, and we'll try to meet the moment as well. We're going to open now for questions for the congressman. And first question, I know one of our students right here, and then.
Thank you for taking this time to talk about these issues with us, Congressman. What I'd like to hear your thoughts on has to do with President Trump's remarks on NATO recently. Now that we're in a moment where our president is actively undermining and alienating our closest European allies, what mechanisms or tools does Congress have to stabilize U.S. foreign policy and sort of signal continuity for the future for our allies?
Yeah. I am getting angry about a lot of things, but the way in which he's treating our allies and our friends is a big one, because I served with these people. I fought with them. Do you know, when I was in Afghanistan, the country that per capita had the highest casualties other than the United States in the war of Afghanistan? Denmark, right? I mean, these people, the only time in the history of NATO that the mutual self-defense obligation has been invoked was after 9/11, when they came to our aid. So I get pretty hot when the president maligns these folks who fought with us, died with us, suffered with us. And I'm also a firm believer, per your point, I surmise, that we are strong as a country, not just because we have aircraft carriers and bomber groups and satellites and all this stuff. We are actually the strongest and the best because we have friends. And we never go it alone. And frankly, we have been up until recently, the envy of the world on that, right? You always want to kind of see what we're doing that works well. Look at what our adversaries are trying to mimic. They for the last 20 years, they've been trying to copy our alliance network, and they've been failing at it, right? So they're trying to do what we've spent 80 years building. And now we're kind of throwing it out the window because of this president. So what do we do about it? Number one, we have the appropriations process. I sit on the Armed Services Committee, and we every year pass the National Defense Authorization Act. Fortunately, this is one area of bipartisanship where a lot of the Republicans have joined with the Democrats on that committee, and we have put in place guardrails. In fact, the defense bill that we passed last year set limits on the ability of this administration to withdraw troops from Europe. Actually, the administration tried to cancel out funding for Ukraine. We put it back in, right? So we have used that appropriations process to erect guardrails and to overturn a bunch of the policies of this administration on defense matters that we think are undermining our national security. That's number one. Number two, Congress needs to reassert itself in treaty and ally powers, right? So I think this is one of the many issues, one of the many areas in which Congress has given its power over decades to the presidency, and we have to sign off on treaties. Tariffs is a part of that because tariffs have been weaponized with this administration against our allies. I'm hoping that the Supreme Court case will come down in our favor. There's some indications that it may, in which case we'll be back in the driver's seat and we'll be able to overturn some of the bad tariffs that this administration is imposing that's undermining our alliances. And then Congress has, the Constitution is clear about this, Congress has a role in our foreign policy, a congressional diplomatic role. We go on congressional delegation trips, we visit with foreign leaders. I take several of these a year where we go and we present, is increasingly the case, the alternative to our friends and allies to what they're seeing through official channels through the administration, where we talk about what the American people really are saying, what they support, and what we're going to legislate on. I'm actually going on one of these trips in a couple of weeks to a large international security conference to meet with all of our NATO partners and allies and deliver such a message. So there is that important diplomatic role that we have as well.
Over here.
Hello. Okay.
Hi.
Hi. Thank you for being here. My name's Taylor. I'm a first-year Masters of Public Policy student. So I think it's great that you're here to engage in these types of conversations. My question is, MAGA Republicans are running on the promise of completing the policy roadmap set out in Project 2025. Democrats are often described as running in opposition to that agenda. But beyond winning control of Congress, their longer-term policy vision is less clearly articulated. What do you think a compelling Democratic policy agenda should look like in response to Project 2025? Thank you.
We have another hour, right? No, first of all, the premise of your question is exactly spot on, right? We can't defeat something with nothing. Right, it's just not gonna work being opposed to this administration. We have to have our viable agenda, and that's been very clear from the last few election cycles. So, I mean, I'm not going to outline my full policy vision right now. That would take way too long, but I think the thrust of it has to be being very bold and aggressive on restoring our democracy. I think that this administration has made corruption. There's these adages in elected office like nobody really thinks about corruption and nobody really thinks about democracy. I just don't think that's true right now. Lowering the cost of living is certainly number one on most people's agenda, and that is on our agenda. But lowering costs in this context also requires that we combat corruption and we create a democracy that works. Because nobody who's paying attention will say that our democracy is working right now. And that's campaign finance reform, that's redistricting, that's judicial reform, that is that is campaign communications reform and putting guardrails in place there, and that has to be an essential part of it, and it's countering corruption. I grew up in a working class family, and I started working when I was 15 in fast food and worked in construction to help put my way through college. And I come from a conservative family, politically, and a working class family. And what I can tell you is a lot of Americans bristle at this idea that government's going to fix their problems, it's going to solve their problems. And they don't want government to give a handout, to fix their problems, or to solve things. What people want more than anything else, and what's, I think, a universal good for people, and why I became a Democrat, is because they want fairness. People just want a level playing field. They know the game is rigged, because it is. They know the playing field is not level. People want the ability to compete and succeed on their own merits in a fair game. And if that's ultimately what we are about, there are so many other things. There are so many policies that flow out of that, but that has to be the core of what we're about, and it has to be our starting point. And we have to be very bold about that in a way that I think we haven't been before, which is in pushing back at institutional power structures, which is why I'm literally the only representative in the state of Colorado that doesn't take corporate PAC money, right? Because when I was first campaigning, I saw the disillusionment, the disaffectedness of people that just said, "Hey, you seem like a nice person, but good luck. There's no way you're going to change it," right? Because of all these structures. Like, all right, well, I can't, change it today, but I can start doing things today that show that it can be changed one step at a time. So things like that are really important.
You alluded to the fact that you only have an hour. We're very grateful at the time. Your schedule must be pretty incredible right now. Would you be okay if we took maybe 2 or 3 questions at a time so we get as many in as we can, and maybe
I'll try to shorten it a little bit, Fritz.
Yeah. All right. Well, yeah, we could do that as well. So we start right here, then the front, and then we'll go.
Yes. Well, first of all, I just want to thank you for your voice for democracy and what you're doing. The one thing that hasn't been discussed tonight that really concerns me is the abuse of our NATO friends and making them mad. And if I heard right, I think Denmark sold off $8.5 billion worth of U.S. Treasury bonds. And that's going to bankrupt us if all our NATO friends start selling off the U.S. bonds, raising interest rates to keep funding it, and we could end up in a recession because of that. And that scares me to death.
Let's take, thank you. Let's take 2 more on this side, and Mandy, maybe make you walk as far as possible. So, yeah, all right.
Thank you. One of my questions is, what are the Democrats going to do to secure these midterms elections? Because he's threatening in every way he can to make sure they don't happen. And lastly, what will you do as Democrats once you do gain control to make sure that all of these people in his administration who have done illegal actions are brought to justice and prosecuted?
Yeah.
All right, and maybe one in the back.
I'm going to write
Mandy.
these down so I
Okay,
can
yeah,
keep track.
okay.
I just wanted some more information on this Department of Peace.
The Board of Peace?
The Board of Peace. Okay, why don't we stop there for the moment, and then let you tackle those 3, and then we'll take 3 from over here, and we'll try to get as many of your questions in as we can. Okay.
Okay, so the gentleman over here, you're right in that the administration's half-baked tariff plans are first and foremost a tax on American consumers. Right, that's what tariffs do. So Americans are paying more for almost all goods, and it's devastating U.S. industry and U.S. businesses actually that rely on a global supply chain for their goods. So I mean, I talk to businesses all the time. Actually, this morning, just had a business roundtable down in South Metro talking about this issue and how much it's hurting them. And Europe is our #1 trading partner, right? So they're not without recourse here, right? And without ways of punishing the United States if they continue on this foolish path. So that's why I'm hoping that the Supreme Court decision will come down and Congress will be able to rein this in. Election security, I'm deeply concerned about that. This president continues to say the quiet part out loud and talk about not wanting to have elections, or I mentioned earlier sending troops to polling stations and doing other things. So I don't think we can rule anything out. I think this president will try to put his hand on the scale or stack the deck, however you want to say it. And hope is not a plan for me. It never has been and it never will be. So we are looking at every different contingency. I'm a part of a kind of a response task force to look at contingencies and have plans ready to go. I'm a military person by trade and by background, so you have to have plans for everything, and you have to be ready to go. And that involves, communications and litigation and mobilizing. But everybody also has a role in that. What we need right now is election judges and people to volunteer to uphold the law. And it doesn't matter at all what your political affiliation here. I'm sure there are Republicans and independents in this crowd. We need people simply who are dedicated to the rule of law and the Constitution and making sure our elections proceed according to the law. And that is largely a function done by the states and it is solely done by the states and by the counties and county clerks, and it's largely run by volunteers. And we need people who are willing to step up and to do that. And that's a tough job right now, actually, because there's a lot of threats, and our county clerks are getting a lot of threats right now. It's challenging for them, but we need people to step up. The Board of Peace, it is very, very hard to get any information from this administration about this board. I can tell you the members of this Board of Peace are not people that are prone to peace, just by their background and their bios. So you can call me skeptical. I mean, listen, I want peace in this region just like everybody does, right? The Palestinians need to have self-determination and sovereignty in their own state and security, and the Israelis need to have security and sovereignty. There won't be peace until both peoples are respected and have sovereignty and self-determination and autonomy and security. I want information from this administration about how they're going to achieve that. Obviously, the rhetoric of Jared Kushner and Steve Witkoff and Donald Trump about turning this into a resort community obviously is a pretty disgusting thing. Their rhetoric is pretty disgusting about this. We're trying to get as much information as we can, and that's why having the majority in November will be important, because it'll give us more tools to get that information.
All right. Let's take three on this side, Sage. So, one in the front, and then.
First of all, thank you for being here. With all the chaos going on, the Ukraine has kind of fallen off the front page. Is there still hope, and what's happening?
Well, I know a lot of you. I'm sorry. We're supposed to do several in a row.
We're going to do.
We can do several.
Write them down. Right there. That's great.
Hi, perfect. I was just curious, with the growing rise of AI and technology, and with Trump wanting to reindustrialize the industrial base and manufacturing base to the United States, how do we couple with actually expanding our technological institutions while we're seeing this push to manufacturing?
Great. And one somewhere in the back there, Sage. It's there's just too many, and thank you for.
So my question is basically, how do you deal with these sociopaths? I keep hearing that, we have to go through the process. I mean, my Senator Chuck Schumer back in New York, he's like, we got to go through the process. We got to go this. Yeah, but they're not. They're doing everything illegal. Our process is just being undermined and cut, and it seems like the Democrats are getting weaker when they try to go through the process and get these votes. And I guess the second part is that somebody got to tell these Republicans, hey, do you want to be on the right side of history or not? And J.D. Vance, because I was in the Army too, had to start acting like a Marine and start having some integrity, because in the Army, it's like integrity, values, whatever, and he does not have it. So what do you say to those people that don't want to be on the right side of history as well. Thank you.
Should I go now? Okay.
You can.
Ukraine, there is always hope for Ukraine, and I say that because I've spent time over there, and I've met a lot of Ukrainians. I spend a lot of time on this issue, and if you know the Ukrainians, you know they're not giving up, right? They are a fierce and independent and strong people. Vladimir Putin thinks he can just grind out the Ukrainians. He's got another thing coming. We need to do everything possible to support them not because this is charity, because it's actually also in U.S. interest to do that, right? If there's peace and prosperity in Europe, we benefit from that. And if there's war and turmoil in Europe, we have to deal with the consequences of that. And it's very clear Vladimir Putin's long-term plan is chaos and destruction in Europe. He's said as much. Right? He's actually said that. He's held up a map of what he wants to do with Europe, and it has a lot of NATO countries as part of his Russian empire, which we can't allow to happen. But there is hope. It's tough, and what this president is doing is pretty disgusting. Turning back on a close partner and ally, and people who are fighting for their freedom and their democracy in much the same way that we did as a young nation. You can clap for that. Industrialization and technology, you have to tell me whether I understand the question right, but it's the tension between invigorating the industrial base versus promoting a technology like information economy. Did I get that right? I don't think those are mutually exclusive. I think, my view of where the economy is going, advanced manufacturing and industrialization, I think can go hand in hand with the information economy, and I think it must, because we still need to produce things. In fact, we need to produce things again here, and I'm actually a proponent of re-onshoring and reindustrialization. When Trump talked about this in the campaign, I actually agreed with what he talked about. I mean, he's done the opposite in terms of like reindustrialization and reinvigorating the base in this country, because it's not about tariffs. Like any business person will tell you, you can't just impose a tariff and like a factory will pop up. That's just not the way it works. Right? You need workforce. Workforce is actually one of our biggest problems. We don't have the workforce that we need. We don't have the education infrastructure. We don't have the information and little infrastructure that we need to rebuild. So all of the stuff that makes an industrial base has to be reinvigorated in order for that to happen. And that's where my focus has been, particularly on the workforce development piece. Because if we have the workforce in place, so much of it kind of will follow from there, and that includes things like AI, right? The country that owns AI will own the economic future of their people, because so much of it is going to be about harnessing AI for good and also preventing the potentially catastrophic consequences of AI and the workforce displacement that could happen. There's a lot more we could talk about on that. And then to the gentleman's question, the veteran as well. Are you Army guy or? Okay. Whew, good. I hear you on the frustration of it just seems like we're losing so much, right? And trying to follow the rules and playing and all. I get that. I'm not trying to just follow the old rules for the sake of following rules. But I'll say this. Our outcome, what we're seeking, is different. Oftentimes what people will say, we need to fight fire with fire or adopt their tactics. They're trying to destroy. They're trying to tear down and pit us against each other. And the tactics and the things that you do when you're pursuing that end are different from the way you conduct yourself and the tactics that you pursue when you're trying to build and bring people together. So I'm not a proponent of, so-called fighting fire with fire and acting in the way they do. But don't think that that is the same as being weak, right? Because we can be strong and fierce and have moral clarity while we also are pursuing things on our own terms and building coalitions and doing things the right way and the way that democracies and a democratic people should. I don't think those are mutually exclusive. And I think if you lead the right way, you can do both. You can both make sure that you're uniting people and you have different rhetoric than they have, but also do it in a strong way. That said, I alluded earlier to the lady's question over here about how we not just rebuild, because the people don't want to go back, right? Donald Trump is destroying a lot of what we took for granted and held dear. And people simply don't want to just rebuild back to where we came from. We want things to be better. We want to build something that actually works in a way that it didn't before. And a lot of that has to do with our economy, a real working class agenda for Americans, not just a fake one that uses working class language, but actually just promotes wealth at the top. And both parties have been guilty of that over many decades. Real democracy reform that's meaningful and goes to the type of democracy that people expect. We have to mean it, and we have to actually follow through and not just say it like so many folks have in the past.
Well, I promised your team we would only take you for an hour, and that hour is unfortunately up and all too quickly. Please join me in thanking Congressman Crow for your leadership, your clarity, and as they say, thank you for your service.